has a shot, but it goes the other way.
Lebas.
Hello, good evening, and welcome to another episode of the Wednesday Week.
A little bit older than you.
And I'm not touching this topic. I'm not touching it.
Yeah.
Mediocre, mid-table, rabble, aren't
So I just want to be able to talk as much
If you
crap.
play a night game, he has to turn the bloodlines on.
No one would have believed that he would keep his job for as long as he had. But
The Wednesday Week.
It says we're streaming. I'm just going to wait until I see myself on the internet, and then I'm going to go, that's me done it. You know what I mean? Right, okay. I'm on. We're away. Two things I've got to get out of the way. One, my apologies for my terrible haircut right now. I thought it'd be a great idea to shave my head before lockdown, and as you can see, it was a dreadful idea. Secondly, I'm pleased to announce that we are now sponsored by Michael Constantine Wealth Management. Their services include retirement planning, inheritance, tax planning, corporate planning. You can tell I'm reading this, corporate pension planning, employee benefits. Better yet, Mike himself is a lifelong owl. So welcome aboard, Mike, and thank you for paying for us to host this online, a lockdown live. Simon, you're our first client for this under our new sponsorship. Please welcome to the show, Mr. Simon Donnelly, ladies and gentlemen. He's joined us. We're live. Thank you so much. My apologies for the Celtic result that's happened this evening.
Not great.
Do you still follow Celtic quite significantly then, I assume?
Of course, the first club that I was professionally at, I had 7 years there. I've actually worked there doing Celtic TV the last 2 years, following the team. It's successful times, but yeah, trying times at the moment. And another body blow tonight, a bad result over in Prague.
Well, I'm so sorry that Celtic might not win the league again this year. You know what I mean? We're Sheffield Wednesday fans. We're used to constant disappointment. So, speaking of the latter, let's dive right into it now. Like I've said before, there's a big gag around the Sheffield Wednesday fraternity that if you didn't support Sheffield Wednesday in the 90s, you don't count. So during it was the season of 1999, not a great year for us, not a great time for us as a club. So it's great talking to people like John Newsom who was there in and around it and all the rest of it. But I'd like to know more about what it was like at the club when you came in at the time that you did.
Yeah, I signed in 1999. As I say, you're talking about the 90s. I remember the early 90s when Sheffield Wednesday were getting to FA Cup finals, and I watched the teams with Warhurst and Hurst and some fantastic games. I think it was at Blackburn in the Cup. I can't remember, but some fantastic games that I watched. I guess I was at Celtic at the time, early in my Celtic career. Very familiar. Chris Waddle, another huge player for Sheffield Wednesday, who I've actually, believe it or not, seen down in Marseille when I was down there as a kid on a summer holiday. Went along the coast to watch him playing for Marseille. So to come to the club in '99, when the Premiership, such a long time ago, it was a huge lure. I remember coming down, me and Phil signed on Bosman's. So we came down to watch Sheffield Wednesday, Chelsea towards the end of the season previous. Met the manager, my under-21 teammate for Scotland, Philip Scott, was already at the club. So he was keeping us posted with everything that was happening. But if you remember, Wednesday were teetering down the bottom of that table the year before we came, and we'd already committed ourselves to the club. And you're thinking, please just stay in the Premiership. We want to be in the Premiership. Thankfully, he's did, and we came down, as I say, in '99. But it was a difficult year. Looking back at it now, there was loads of different things going on. I think there was a lot of players coming maybe to their end of their careers. Des Walker, a fantastic servant to the club, fantastic player, huge character. These guys were all coming towards the end of their careers, and the club were finding themselves at the wrong end of the Premiership at the time. So we were coming into it new and fresh, but I think the club, you correct me if I'm wrong, the club were struggling at that point.
Absolutely, yeah. I don't, it wasn't a party until you turned up. Do you know what I mean? I think having lost players like Paolo Di Canio, like we did. I think that was just before you arrived, wasn't it? And then so we weren't having a great time, as it were. I'm racking my brain to work out who it was that was the manager that got you in. Who was there when you came for the visit, and who was there when you?
Danny Wilson.
It was Danny.
Danny.
Now, what we spoke about before with some of the other players is that they were talking about there was a division in the changing room, and now that sounds like metaphorical, but there was a literal division. It was Matt Hamshaw that told us that they'd split the changing room into two, and on one side you had the British lads, and the other side the foreign lads, I believe.
That actually had not entered my head until you actually said that, but yeah, I do remember some sort of divide in the changing room at the training ground. I do remember that. But you've got to realise we were coming in from Celtic blind. I didn't know any of the guys there. I knew some of the guys from watching Sheffield Wednesday on the television. I didn't know any of them personally. My big thing coming from a dressing room at Celtic, which was really tight. We'd just won the league the year before. It was really tight, a lot of good friendships, a lot of stuff away from the park we did. My memory of that changing room, for whatever reason, right or wrong, after training, everybody dispersed. There was guys went towards Leeds, there was guys went towards Nottingham, there was other guys that stayed within the city, but there wasn't a real, for me, in my opinion, there wasn't a real camaraderie. There wasn't right, we're going to go on a Tuesday, we've maybe get the Wednesday off. This is what we did at Celtic. You'd be out for a meal, a few drinks. The wives would know each other. That was different for me when I came to Sheffield Wednesday, and that was probably one of the big differences that I noticed when I first joined. That you were kind of stood there with your boots in your hand, saying, "Are we not going for a coffee or something like that?" You know what I mean? That type of thing. It was kind of like that, and I'm not having a go, but that's just the way it was. You would. And we were new, so I would be with Phil. We would go back down towards the south of the city where we were living, and there was no real right. Let's do this after training kind of thing. It was, and it's maybe understandable because guys were commuting an hour. They maybe just wanted to go home. Whereas in Glasgow at Celtic, it was a wee bit more. Even the foreign guys that came to the club, you made them welcome and they were on the nights out. They were sometimes the first guys to be on the nights out, and that's just the way it was.
Do you not think there'd be like traditionally you'd expect there to be a locker room or a changing room leader that would get hold of the squad and say, right, I'm going to take hold of this and we're going to do exactly what we're talking about there. If the manager couldn't see it, it would be the manager's responsibility to say, right, we'll do a little bit team building, team bonding, whatever it may be. We will get together and we will do something to try and galvanise the squad. Was there nobody sort of in and around it that wanted to get a grip of it? Not really that I remember. And again, you guys are refreshing my memory. I think we got to the first, it was maybe the second season, it was the Christmas night out. And I'm not taking credit for it, but there was 2 or 3 of us actually trying to organise a Christmas night with the players and their partners. We ended up doing it in a place not far from I stayed in Dore. I lived in Dore when I was at Sheffield Wednesday, and we ended up doing it in a place just going into the Derbyshire Moors. I forget the name, but it was almost as if we had to instigate it ourselves. And that, again, no real criticism towards anybody. It just seemed to be what happened at the time, and for right or for wrong, I don't think it had a good effect on the kind of the team camaraderie. I think everybody just kind of looked after their own wee bit. Was it kind of treated then, or thinking about it now, did it feel more like it was just a job as opposed to like a way of life, like you're saying with Celtic? I mean, I live up here now, so I think the big buy-in with Celtic when they're trying to attract talent is very much to have that whole buy-in. It's a culture, you're buying into the whole thing, and likewise the other side of the city, and it is almost competition about how much you can be taken into like a family. Whereas with Wednesday, it sounds a little bit like you came in, you trained, you went home, and there was none of that care beyond. And was that maybe part of it, the fact that it was just kind of treated as a job by some of the guys that were there? Yeah, I think so.
I think so. But me coming from a different environment, noticed it more. When I was at Celtic, we had a period before we won the league. We had a group of boys there, maybe all my age. We were all kind of mates. And then we got to the year we won it in '98. There was 8 or 9 new players, so it wasn't as if we were integrated for a few seasons. There was 8 new arrivals, maybe more that year, but they gelled, and it was maybe the guys that were already there that created that. And there was a real, I'm pals with a lot of those guys even now, whereas from the Sheffield Wednesday dressing room, I've got the odd guy on Twitter or a message, you know, and that's the difference I found in my time down there.
Wow, that's quite interesting, especially that the changing room at Celtic he came from was a successful one. You know what I mean? And at the time, Sheffield Wednesday were having a bit of a turnout. Now, to change it slightly though, so Danny Wilson went. That's absolutely gone blank. We got Ron Atkinson to try and stave off relegation. Did you play for Ron, or no. Am I thinking the season before?
We had started with Danny. Peter
That's
Shreves,
right.
Peter Shreves had a couple of stints, I think.
Yeah, that's right. Shrigor came in, and then you played for Paul Jewell.
Paul Jewell was there. I think Paul Jewell maybe took over from Danny, if I'm remembering rightly. I can't remember.
It was I can't.
Did Jewell not come in the minute we got relegated?
That's right. Yeah.
Right. So Wilson took us down.
Yeah, essentially, and then Paul Jewell came in. God, I've just realised this is something that's been etched on my brain.
Danny left. I think maybe Peter Shreves came in before Jewell, but Danny Wilson left before the season was finished. That's 100% certain.
Okay, so we're now in the championship. Was there a change in atmosphere around the club? Did Paul come in and go, okay, this is what we're going to change. We're going to change this. We're going to change that in terms of attitude. You know, the camaraderie stuff that you were talking about. Did he bring any of that in? Because to overachieve like he did with Wigan, you'd think that obviously he's got that man management side of his game down a little bit. No. Yeah.
Again, trying to remember correctly what I gathered from when we went down, a lot of the guys who'd been there, you know, senior players moved on, and I remember there was almost a thinking of, right, we're going to get rid of those guys. We were just in the door. So it was me, Phil, Gerald, the builder. We kind of all came at the same time. So we remained for that time. I think the builder left not long after. But I think they were going to go with youth, which I thought, you know, yeah, that's a good way to go. There was a lot of good young ones coming through. Morrison, Dalgary, Alan Quinn. These were all boys that were coming through. Lee Bromby. And I think they kind of, again, look, hindsight's a wonderful thing. I think they fooled themselves thinking we're going to bounce straight back here with the youth. Now, I'd never played in the Championship, and as you guys know, I experienced a lot of injuries, so I came towards the tail end of that year back into the fray. But the Championship's a bloody hard league. It's a bloody hard league, and I think the club were guilty of underestimating it. I think they thought we'd bounce straight back, and we found ourselves for the next few seasons when I was there, staving off relegation, trying to survive that division. So for me, it was a culture shock, because I'm coming from Celtic where you've got 90% of the possession, you're attacking most of the time, and I'm finding myself in a team where we're dogging, we're trying to fight off, you know, very physical teams, trying to get results, and it was a culture shock to me, I must admit.
Was there anybody in particular that used to come up against, like especially in the Championship as well, that you'd be like, oh, they've got such and such? Do you know what I mean? Like, I've got to mark him again. I can't be arsed. Like, he's a dick. Like, you know what I mean? Do you ever come across any of those players?
Not so much. There's more sticks in my head from my experiences in the Premiership against opposition than there was in the Championship. If I'm
like going up against the Arsenal back four or something, you'd be like, oh, God.
We came up, my first 2 games for Sheffield Wednesday were Liverpool at Hillsborough and Man United at Old Trafford on the Wednesday. And when the fixture list came out, I was like, this is what I signed up for. This is what I want. Liverpool, and then we're playing Man United at Old Trafford on the Wednesday. How good's this? So I started the game at Hillsborough against Liverpool. We get beat. I get taken off after about an hour. I think Carboni came on for me. We go through to Old Trafford on the Wednesday. I'm not even on the bench. I've been left out. I'm sitting in the stand. My whole family are down from Scotland. I've got tickets for everybody. I'm finding myself sitting in the stand. We get battered 4-0. I'm back in on the Saturday away to Bradford, back in the starting lineup. So I went from the starting lineup to not quoted, back in the starting lineup. I'm trying my best playing right midfield, and I give away a penalty against Peter Beagrie. You couldn't ask for a worse possible start in my Sheffield Wednesday career, mate. I'm not joking. So I think we get beat at Bradford, but I've brought Peter Beagrie down. I couldn't tackle a fish supper. That's I'm trying my best, chasing back, giving away penalties. After that, not long after that, was the infamous Newcastle game, St James's Park, where it was me on the right mid, John Newsom was right back. We were up against Sylvain Distin, who could run like the wind. And the two hours weren't particularly quick. And Shearer get 5 that day.
Yeah.
I think they won 8. You know, that was the first few months at the club. And it wasn't great.
That game against Newcastle, it was a friend of mine's birthday. And I said to him, right, we'll drive up. We'll drive from Sheffield. It's not that far, you know what I mean? It's a decent journey up. It's your birthday, we'll take you out. And then we'll get out down the tone for a proper night out, like, you know what I mean? And then we were back in the local boozer for about, I think it was about 7:30. We just fucked off. No, I've had enough of this, like, you know what I mean? But there must have been a point there, though, where you've gone, what have I signed for? What is going on here? Could you
so much the club, because I had 4 great years in Sheffield. I don't care. The football for me wasn't great because of injury, and obviously we get relegated, and it would be great for you guys watching as well. But I love my time there. I'll come back to that. But to go to that Newcastle game, I was taken off second half, and you're kidding. I thought to myself, you know what, I actually did all right. I don't remember giving the ball away. We were getting beaten. So it wasn't an easy start.
So, I mean, after a season like that then, and then going down, and then going into the Championship, your first game, we're now 13 seconds into our first game of the Championship, and then the goalkeeper gets sent off. Then you must be sat there thinking, oh, God. You know, I had a career in front of me. I was playing for the biggest team in Scotland.
It just didn't, for whatever reason, it didn't work out. I look back, as I said to you earlier on, the year before, you know, Sheffield Wednesday, they were in the bottom 5, and I was hoping, you know, they'd survive for us to get into the Premiership and then kick on. It never happened that way, and I feel for the club, because I do have great memories there, both living there and around the club playing. There was the odd highlight for me on the pitch, I must admit, but they are an English Premiership club, and that's where I feel really sorry for you guys that you haven't been there since. That they belong in that English Premiership. It's an absolute no-brainer. You know, the size of the club. When we were teetering in relegation for the Championship, there was 30,000 plus at the games. 30,000 plus fans at the games willing us on to stay in that league. And for me, the size of the club, and even before I signed, as I say, I follow the English game hugely, Premiership. I grew up watching Liverpool, Man United, and Sheffield Wednesday were very much part of that, you know, Premiership that I was aware of.
Yeah, it's been a long 20 years. I turned 40 about 4 weeks ago, and it's literally half my life away now. You know what I mean? There's going to be a point where we're going to have been in the Premier League less than I've been alive. You know what I mean? I don't like that, because when I was a teenager, Sheffield Wednesday were a Premier League club. Steve, have you got a question, sir?
Yeah, obviously we talked about you coming down with Phil O'Donnell. Was that always something that was pre-planned? Forgive me, I don't know what your relationship was like beforehand. Was it always sort of on the cards that you were going to come up together?
We were good pals at Celtic. We were similar ages, and there was a group of the young kids at Celtic. I'm saying kids, we were maybe 22, 23, that all got on, all the partners got on. We socialised together. And to answer your question, no, because we had the same agent, but I think West Ham were in for Phil, interested with Phil. And I'd kind of had a wee tip that Everton, I think Walter Smith was at Everton at the time. So whether that's accurate, I don't know. But Sheffield Wednesday seemed to come about as the first club to kind of actually put an offer in for the two of us. And I must admit, it did help me make my decision, because you're coming away from something that it's all you know. Your home city. I was at Celtic 7 years, and it was something totally different. And it made my decision easier knowing that he was coming with me. It did. Because he had a young family at the time. He had 2 kids. I had my fiancée at the time, who's now my wife. So we were coming down together. And I touched on earlier on, obviously I knew Philip Scott from under 21s, but again, didn't know him that well. So it made it easier. It made that transition of coming down easier, knowing that one of my good pals was coming as well.
Yeah. Did you ever sort of be behind the scenes, away from the training ground? Obviously, we talked about the fact that there wasn't necessarily that group sort of mentality. I'm assuming that you guys spent a lot of time together around the club, around the city. He would have shared the same sort of sentiments that you did. Yeah, and it's something that, a lot of people, particularly up here, ask me if I regret leaving Celtic, just because of the way my football career panned out. But I had 4 years in Sheffield with Phil O'Donnell, and we lived in each other's pockets. Up here, he lived in Hamilton, which is a wee bit outside Glasgow, so we'd see each other daily, but maybe wouldn't socialise together as much. At Sheffield, we were Sundays, I was at his house, he was at my house. Christenings, I was at his house. Things going on, we were together. We travelled to work together. We came back from work together. We were both injured together. We were doing rehab in the gym, staying out with the boys, watching them train. We went through a lot together. And after everything that happened with Phil, I'm grateful for that time with him.
I can imagine his passing hit you quite hard then at some point.
Massively, mate, massively. It's tough to talk about, but I do look back on that time where I was there, and I'm grateful for it, because we were together practically 24/7 for 4 years.
I can imagine. My sincerest, deeply, apologies isn't the word, But let's move on then. So let's talk about some of the players and the people that you were playing alongside. You mentioned the I don't know what we call them now, the Blades trio in Bromby, Quinn, and Geary. You mentioned those lads. You mentioned Gerald as well, whose start when he first signed for the club wasn't great, and then all of a sudden he turned into a bit of a cult hero of ours, didn't he? And then we had Chef Kikuchi and that bloody celebration. Talk about some of the players around you at the time, because I bet there was some big characters there, no?
Yeah, Gerald was a big character. Fantastic footballer, Gerald. Really enjoyed playing with Gerald Sabon. Clever. And you're right, he didn't take it straight away. Again, probably adjusting from his time over in Holland, coming to a different country, but adapted well. And I thought he was one of Sheffield's top players when I was there. Do you think
the big problem with him was that he looked like he should have just been a great big centre forward, and you have that British English mentality of he's 6'4", he's going to be cracking in the air, and all his game was not about that at all.
It was the opposite. It was finesse and touch and creativity. So you're maybe right. You're maybe right. The fans see this long, gangly guy coming in, but again, Peter Crouch, like, you know, lovely touch and vision, and I love playing with him. I did. I thought he was an intelligent football player. Chef Kikuchi, maybe the opposite, brute force, just would run through a brick wall, you know. And another
he was never 24 when he played for Wednesday. There's no chance.
I'm not having it. You know those Nigerians with their fake birth certificates that you get every now and again. I always feel that Chef Kikuchi was one of them. Like, you know what I mean? Like,
a man mountain. He was.
He was. He's a bear.
A nice guy as well, lovely guy, but powerful runner. But brute force rather than the Sabon finesse. It was brute force with Shefke. The boys are touching on there. Alan Quinn, Lee Moser, Del Gary. We had they were massive Celtic fans. They were like, when me and Phil, it was like we were babysitting those three at times. They came into the first team environment and with some great times with the guys. We brought them up to a Celtic Rangers semi-final at Hampden Park, the three of them. And I'm not joking, it was harder. I've got three boys. It was harder to look after those three that night than it was bringing my three boys up. They were everywhere. They were like kids in a beauty shop, spotting players, and we had to look after them. But good players as well, good boys, came from Ireland, hungry to succeed, and carved out good careers for themselves. You know, talented boys. And that probably, once those three and the younger ones came into that dressing room, along with new additions that came in, it probably began to feel more like a dressing room than it was when I first came in when we were in the Premier League, which is a wee bit weird. It felt more of a team with the guys.
Well, it'd be normally at this point where we'd ask you about, what would be the term? Vic normally has questions, doesn't she, based around the players. So who had the best banter, who had the worst dress sense? I mean, let's start with those two then. So, you know, who was fun to be around?
The young Irish boys.
Yeah.
Yeah. They were funny. Sometimes they didn't mean to be funny. They didn't mean to be funny, but they were good boys to be around. They were the type of guys that you'd come in the morning and get a wee lift because you could bounce off them. Des Walker for me, when I came in, he played versus Celtic for Nottingham Forest years before, so he kind of knew where I was coming from, and he really never took me under his wing, but he really welcomed me to the club, Des. And again, a character. I mean, been there, done it all, but he never trained. He trained. I know.
We've had other people come back and telling us that before. That him not turn up for training.
He'd be fine. He'd be fine. He'd perform. He'd be okay. But he used to say to me, see, when I was younger, I was out on the Wednesday, I was out on the Thursday, I would train the Friday, and I could perform. I'm like, that's incredible, because you look at the career he had, and obviously very quick. He was getting to the end of his career when I came to the club, but he was probably a voice in the dressing room. Unfortunately, wasn't there for particularly long when I was there.
Were you there when Carlton Palmer came back?
Aye, big Carlton, yeah.
I can imagine that being a banter boss.
He was similar to Des, very loud. I got on well with Carlton as well. I talked to him on Twitter. I think he's over in Dubai or the Emirates. He's got a job across seas now. But he was another one, larger than life. And I knew of Carlton as well from the Graham Taylor England days and watching all that stuff on TV when I was younger. So these guys I knew about before I came in, but they were lively. They were guys that you probably needed in the dressing room.
Okay, so worst dress sense then. Who used to just, you know what I mean? Like, because you miss Paolo Di Canio. I assume he'd turn up with some kind of like silver.
Celtic, you know. Was it Celtic with Paolo?
Oh, of course you were. Yeah. So you must have seen some of the outfits that guy had. You know what I mean? You know, I can imagine. I don't know what it is, but I get the impression that Chef Kikuchi dresses like, you know, something that you'd see in downtown Rotherham nowadays. You know, like a big Adidas outfit, and you know what I mean.
You're taking
Like, you know what I mean?
You're slagging all the Rotherham off.
Yeah.
Honestly, I can't remember. Look at Steve, he's gone. You live in Rotherham, Stevie?
I'm on the border.
Honestly, can't remember. You could probably say anybody looking back in the day. Paolo was larger than life. You know, Paolo used to stand in front of the mirror and tell himself he was beautiful day after day. That was Paolo. But he could back it up with his football.
I mean, Paolo's career via Sheffield from Scotland took him to be a Premier League powerhouse. Did you look at the way that Paolo's career went when he went to West Ham, and did you think, well, Sheffield Wednesday have provided that gateway to go on to bigger things? You know what I mean? Did you see that, and did it make you think Sheffield Wednesday is not the worst place to go to? Because, you know, pulling off two players from a league-winning team up in Scotland for Sheffield Wednesday at the time was a bit of a coup, especially where we were. So yeah. Did you look at Paolo's career and think, we could do that?
Well, first and foremost, we're live on Facebook. I'm not going to compare myself to Paolo Di Canio.
That was very, very sensible.
Right, but no, to be honest, for me, it was the opportunity. Sheffield Wednesday gave me the opportunity to come and play in the English Premiership. And at 24, you think, okay, I'm going to take that chance. I might never get that opportunity again. I'm going to come. I never ever came thinking this is a stepping stone to somebody else. I backed my own ability, and I think you're right. I think getting me and Phil from Celtic was a good move for Sheffield Wednesday, but I think that worked against us in the end, because I think neither of us hit the levels that we came from at Sheffield for whatever reason, mainly injury and maybe the club struggling at the wrong end of the table. And you put that stuff together, and I don't think you definitely didn't ever see the best of me and Phil. And I think those frustrations were levelled against us, and it kind of it worked against us. You know, these two guys down here, and they're not doing it. I know there was questions over us when we were injured at times, but you ask any.
It must have. The person that must have been most frustrated in that situation, it's not the Wednesday players. It's obviously you and Phil at that position, because you've come down with good reputations as Dan said, in a title-winning team, and you're desperate to show that you can step up to that level. Not saying that the SPL in general is lower than the Premier League, but I think we know, generally speaking, it is going to be that. So you're going to be frustrated because you know what you can do. And it's one thing getting a chance in the team, or a team not performing, and you thinking, right, I'm going to get into that team and I'm going to make the team up. You know, I'm going to make sure that I'm the best player in that team and bring everybody up. But if your body's going against you, if there's the injuries, then you're going to want to get back, but then you're rushing getting back, and then you're risking another injury. So I'm sure nobody was more frustrated than the two of you two.
It was unbelievably frustrating. And my injury was an ongoing thing that ended up, you know, get misdiagnosed several times. I ended up going to Crawley and working with a guy for the British Athletics team. And I paid for that myself. I went down there and maybe 8 weeks on the bounce, and I was working 4 hours a day with this guy. It was basically strengthening. I'd been told I needed this op and I needed that op, and I was so frustrated with it. I ended up doing that myself, and I came back from that. Phil, on the other hand, was more unlucky than me, because Phil would rip his ankle ligaments, and then I remember him, one of those kind of weird and wonderful places that Sheffield Wednesday sometimes played pre-season games, one of the kind of low amateur kind of areas round about. He was playing, and he'd be back for one injury, and he'd do his knee. You know, he went from serious injury to serious injury. It was whereas mine was an ongoing weakness that I eventually got sorted with this guy over an 8-week stint. But you're right, you're sitting there and you take a lot of stick. They don't want to play, they just want to pick up their money, and you're like, no footballer wants to do that. Especially, as you say, Dave, guys who have played at a level, who want to come down and show what they can do. Mm-hmm. You know, it was really frustrating.
Wow. Now I've taken up a lot of your time here, and normally I go in with the fans' questions, but I didn't write any. It's all right. They're normally a load of bollocks anyway. I've normally made them all up. Guys, do you have any other questions before I wrap this up?
Just curious. Obviously you speak very highly of Sheffield. Do you still follow the club? Look out for the results? Have any sort of affinity towards what's going on at the minute?
I'll be honest with you. This season, I can't believe how bad the start is. I can't believe Wednesday they're down there. In recent times, I've always looked out. You know, when they've been teetering, they obviously went down. Another league came back up, and then round about the playoffs. I just want Sheffield Wednesday, because I said to you earlier on, I'm genuine with this. I want them back in the English Premiership. That's where they deserve. That's where they deserve to be. But if you were to ask me the 1 to 11 now, if I'm being honest, I couldn't tell you. Well,
you know, I sometimes struggle with it myself. To be honest, you know, normally got somebody else in on loan, and go, who's this guy?
I know. Obviously, the manager's changed recently, and Pulis has come in. So hopefully, you can start moving in the right direction. I mean that.
Well, that's interesting, Simon. So, you know, before we wrap this up, you played for probably about 4 or 5 different managers for Sheffield Wednesday. I mean, you know, who was your best, and who was the, you know, I'm gonna stitch you up now and say who was the shittest, like, you know what I mean? who was the one that you, let's be diplomatic, who was the one you engaged with the most, and was their methods not for you? You know what I mean?
I liked Danny. Obviously signed me, so I respected Danny. I came down to the club before I signed with Phil, and we met him, and he talked us into signing, told us where we were going to play in the team and stuff. Mm-hmm. Obviously wasn't there particularly long. I quite liked Terry Yorith when he came in. I had a relationship there with him. I liked Taff. He was all right, and he had a kind of good camaraderie around the place. I'm not going to say anything about who was the worst, other than in my professional career, and this is for another day, I've been fined twice in my professional career, and Peter Shreves fined me both times. And if we ever chat again, I'll tell you why.
I will endeavour to dig that out of you. Stay on the line, Simon. Thanks a lot for joining us on Facebook. Don't forget to subscribe to us. And I've just done that thing that people do on YouTube videos. Hi, guys. Don't forget to press the subscribe button. Thanks a lot to Michael Constantine. Sorry, my apologies. Need to get the name of the sponsor right for his funding of this. And there'll be more about that later on. Thanks a lot. See you later.
Every week, live from 8 p.m. It's the Wednesday Week, bringing you football analysis.
He came in. I think he scored a goal.
Bringing you banter.
Yeah.
Bringing you responsible life hacks.
Met you wonderful souls at 10 a.m. for some shots.
The Wednesday Week. 1, 2, 3, 4 live. I normally just turn up and phone it in.
I'm a little bit older than you.
Like
That zero's gone, that goose egg's gone.
Also featuring player interviews. It's Mr. Lee Bullen, ladies and gentlemen.
Mr. John Harks, ladies and gentlemen. It's Captain Fantastic once again. It's Mr. Glenn Lubens.
Oh, it's Mr. David Stockdale joining us this evening.
It's Mr. Lloyd Owusu, ladies and gentlemen, who's joining us live on the show.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's Mr. Carlton Palmer. How's it going, CP? You all right? Available on all social medias.
Obviously, this goes out on YouTube and as well as all the other social media out there, podcasts, etc.
The Wednesday Week 24-25 season. Join us next season.
Put on your podcast.